The night, everything changed. That night started just like any other. I was driving my daughter to the airport, thinking it was just another business trip, just another routine goodbye. I couldn't have imagined that within a few hours, my whole world would fall apart. My name is Mira Thompson, and I'm 71 years old. Until that night, I believed my daughter, Clara, was the strongest and most dependable person I knew. Life has a cruel way of showing us how wrong we can be. The terminal lights were bright, reflecting off the polished floors. The sound of rolling suitcases echoed like a song I had heard too many times before. Clara adjusted the strap of her carry-on, glanced at her watch, and smiled, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. 3 days, Mom. I'll be back before the weekend. Take care of Eli, and don't forget his allergy meds. Eli, my 7-year-old grandson, stood quietly beside me, clutching his faded dinosaur backpack. He was a quiet boy, old-souled, always observing the world more than speaking to it. But tonight, something was off. He wouldn't even look at his mother. "It's just 3 days, sweetheart," I told him, crouching down. "We'll have pancakes in the morning, okay?" He nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on Clara. There was fear there, not the kind children get from goodbyes, but the kind that comes from knowing something terrible. Clara crouched down and kissed her forehead. "Be good for Grandma," she said, her voice soft but distant. Then she straightened, gave me a quick hug, and walked toward the gate. I watched her fade into the crowd until she was gone. "Come on, Eli," I told him, taking his hand. "Let's go home." We walked in silence through the parking garage. The lights flickered, throwing long shadows across the floor. When we reached the car, Eli suddenly stopped. His grip on my wrist tightened, painfully. "Grandma," he whispered, "please, don't take me home tonight." I blinked. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" He looked up at me, eyes wide with panic. "I heard Mama this morning. She was in her office on the phone. She said everything was ready, that it had to look like an accident." The words hit me like ice water. I knelt down, searching his face. "What kind of accident, Eli?" He swallowed. "She said the gas would leak while we were sleeping." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to tell myself it was a misunderstanding, that no mother could ever, but the fear in his eyes told me this was no story. Without another word, I took his hand, unlocked the car, and started the engine. The only thing I knew for sure was that we weren't going home. Not tonight. But before we continue, make sure you're already subscribed to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love knowing how far our stories reach. I didn't realize it yet, but by morning, my daughter would know we'd disappeared, and that's when everything would truly begin. The escape. The city lights blurred behind us as I drove into the night. I didn't know where I was going, only that it had to be far from home. My heart was pounding, my hands trembling so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. Beside me, Eli sat in silence, his small hands clutching the seatbelt like a lifeline. Every few minutes, he'd glance back through the rear window, as if expecting to see headlights following us. "Are we running away, Grandma?" he finally asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know, baby," I whispered. "We're just staying safe for now." For the first time in 71 years, I had no plan, no certainty. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, might have been plotting to harm us, and I didn't even know why. We drove for almost an hour through dark, empty streets. The clock on the dashboard blinked past midnight. When Eli finally drifted to sleep, his head resting against the window, I stopped at a 24-hour gas station on the edge of town. Inside, I bought a cup of coffee that tasted like burnt water and tried to steady my thoughts. The bright fluorescent lights buzzed above me, making my nerves feel raw. How could Clara do this? How could a mother, my daughter, even think of something so monstrous? Back in the car, I watched Eli sleep. His face was peaceful, completely unaware of how close we might have been to disaster. I brushed a strand of hair from his forehead and promised myself silently that I'd protect him no matter what it took. Then, my phone vibrated, the screen lit up. Clara. I froze. Her flight should have taken off hours ago. Why was she calling? My hand shook as I answered. "Hello?" "Mom," she said softly, almost too calm. "Where are you? You should have been home by now." I swallowed hard. "We stopped for dinner," I lied. "Eli was hungry." "Dinner?" she said. Her voice had that sharp, knowing edge I'd heard 1,000 times before. "Where?" "At the diner near the shopping center?" I said vaguely. "Shouldn't you be on the plane?" There was a pause. Then she sighed. "The flight got delayed. I'm coming home." Her words felt like a blade sliding into my spine. Clara never let details like flight delays surprise her. Something was wrong. I tried to sound casual. "Oh, that's, fine, then. We'll see you later." "Yes, Mom," she said, her tone suddenly honey-sweet. "Take your time. I just wanted to make sure you're okay." The call ended, leaving me staring at my reflection in the dark window, pale, trembling, terrified. Eli stirred in his sleep and opened his eyes. "Was that Mama?" I whispered. "Yes, she's coming home." He blinked, fear flickering back into his face. "Grandma, she knows we left." And just like that, I realized we weren't running. We were being hunted. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and tell us in the comments what you'd do if someone you loved turned dangerous. Because when daylight came, I would discover the truth, and it was far darker than anything I had imagined.
The warning. The night felt endless. Every mile I drove only deepened the pit in my stomach. Eli sat awake now, hugging his backpack, staring out the window as the passing lights flickered across his face. "Grandma?" he said quietly. "What if she finds us?" I hesitated. I wanted to tell him everything would be okay, but I didn't know that for sure. "She won't," I said finally. "Not tonight." We drove until the city faded into silence and the highway stretched before us like a black ribbon. I turned off at a rest stop where a single light flickered above a vending machine. We couldn't go to a hotel. Clara could trace my card. We couldn't go to family. She might contact them first. For the first time in my life, I was scared of my own daughter. I parked near the edge of the lot and turned off the headlights. The quiet was deafening. I watched Eli's reflection in the rearview mirror. He looked far too old for 7. "Eli," I whispered, "can you tell me everything you heard this morning? Every word." He nodded slowly, his voice small and trembling. "She was on the phone. She said, once they're asleep, make sure the gas looks like a leak. No mistakes this time." I froze. "No mistakes this time?" I repeated. "What did she mean by that?" Eli shrugged. "I don't know, but she said something about insurance, and that she'd finally be free after this. Insurance. The word hit me like a thunderclap. My late husband's policy. After he passed, everything had been left to me, with Eli listed as the secondary beneficiary. Clara couldn't touch any of it until I was gone. And suddenly it made sense. Every strange question Clara had asked lately about documents, every time she'd mentioned money being tied up, it all fit together. I felt my chest tighten. "Oh, God," I whispered. "She's doing this for money." Eli looked at me, eyes wide with confusion and hurt. "But she's my mom. Moms don't hurt their kids." I reached back and squeezed his hand gently. "No, sweetheart, they shouldn't." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The night around us was still, except for the hum of passing trucks in the distance. Then I saw headlights in the rearview mirror, bright, getting closer. Too close. Panic shot through me. "Eli," I whispered urgently, "get down." He ducked behind the seat as I held my breath. A black SUV slowed as it passed, its tinted windows rolling by like dark eyes. Then, after a long, unbearable moment, it sped off into the distance. I exhaled shakily, my hands gripping the wheel. Whoever that was, they were looking for someone. Maybe us. We couldn't stay here. We had to move again. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and let me know in the comments, what would you do if your own child turned against you? As dawn approached, I knew we needed help, but the only person I could trust lived in the one place I swore I'd never return to. The only person I could trust. By the time the first traces of dawn touched the horizon, I knew I couldn't keep driving aimlessly. We needed somewhere safe, somewhere Clara wouldn't think to look. And then I remembered Franklin Reed. He'd been the doorman at our old apartment building before we moved into Clara's house 3 years ago. A quiet, kind man with sharp instincts and a loyal heart. He'd known our family for decades, through birthdays, funerals, and all the little moments in between. If anyone would help us, it would be him. "Eli," I said gently, glancing in the rearview mirror, "do you remember Mr. Reed, the man who used to give you candy when you helped him water the plants?" Eli nodded sleepily. "Uh-huh." "We're going to visit him." The highway gave way to narrow city streets as the morning light crept over cracked sidewalks and empty storefronts. The closer we got to our old neighborhood, the more memories came flooding back. The smell of rain on the old bricks, the sound of children playing in the courtyard, and the laughter that used to fill our home before everything went wrong. I parked 2 blocks from the building to avoid drawing attention. "Stay here for just a minute, sweetheart," I said, brushing Eli's hair from his face. "Keep the doors locked, okay?" He nodded, clutching his backpack like a shield. I walked quickly to the security booth, heart pounding. Through the window, I saw Franklin hunched over a crossword puzzle, a small lamp casting a warm glow on his silver hair. I tapped gently on the glass. He looked up, startled. Then his eyes widened. "Mira," he said, opening the door, "what on earth are you doing here at this hour?" "Franklin," I whispered, glancing around nervously, "I need your help. Please, it's an emergency." Within minutes, we were in his small back apartment, a cozy space that smelled faintly of coffee and old books. Eli sipped hot chocolate while I explained everything: the airport, the phone call, what Eli had overheard. Franklin listened silently, his brow furrowed. When I finished, he leaned back and rubbed his chin. "Mira, you're saying your daughter planned to harm you for insurance money?" I know how it sounds, but I saw the fear in Eli's eyes. And there's something else. She's not on that flight. She lied about leaving. Franklin's expression hardened. Then she's probably looking for you right now. The thought sent a chill down my spine. I need to go back to the house, I said suddenly. Back? Franklin repeated. Are you out of your mind? I have to find proof, something the police will believe. Otherwise, it's just my word and a child's story against hers. Franklin stared at me for a long moment, then sighed. If you're going back, you're not going alone. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and tell us in the comments, would you risk everything to expose the truth, even if it meant walking back into danger? That night, as the city fell silent again, I returned to the house I once called home, not knowing what waited for me inside.
Back into the lion's den. The air was heavy with tension as we drove toward the old neighborhood. Franklin's car rattled softly against the road, its headlights slicing through the dark streets. Neither of us spoke for a long time, both lost in the storm of what we were about to do. You don't have to come inside, I told him quietly. I just need a few minutes to check her office. If I can find any documents or messages, we'll finally have proof. Franklin shook his head. No way I'm letting you go in there alone, Mira. If what you say is true, your daughter isn't just dangerous, she's desperate. The truth in his voice made my chest tighten. I wanted to believe Clara still had a trace of humanity left, but deep down, I knew desperation made monsters out of ordinary people. We parked a block away from the house. From a distance, it looked peaceful. Porch light off, curtains drawn, just another sleeping home on a quiet street. But I knew better. The silence felt wrong. 20 minutes, Franklin said, checking his watch. If you're not back by then, I'm calling the police. I nodded, clutching the small flashlight he'd handed me. My heart pounded as I slipped through the side gate and approached the back door. My hands trembled so hard I could barely fit the key into the lock. The door creaked softly as it opened. I stepped inside. The kitchen was dark, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound. The air smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals and something else I couldn't place. I moved cautiously, every floorboard groaning beneath my feet like a warning. The house that once felt like safety now felt foreign and cold. At the top of the stairs was Clara's home office, locked of course. I took out a bobby pin from my pocket, praying I still remembered the old trick from my younger days. After a few tense seconds, the lock clicked open. Inside, everything looked immaculate, too perfect. The desk was spotless, papers neatly stacked, a faint trace of perfume lingering in the air. I turned on the flashlight and began searching. The first two drawers held nothing but bills and receipts. The third drawer, though, had a red folder tucked beneath tax forms. My pulse quickened. I pulled it out. Inside were bank statements under strange names, large transfers to someone called M. Sellers, and, my breath caught, a copy of my life insurance policy with notes scribbled on the margins. Verify payout clause. Insure both victims. My stomach dropped. It was real, all of it. And then, a sound. The front door. I froze, my blood turning to ice. Someone was inside. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and comment below. Would you have the courage to face your fears if they lived under your own roof? I turned off my flashlight and held my breath as footsteps began to climb the stairs, slowly, one by one. The footsteps upstairs. Every instinct in my body screamed, run, but my legs refused to move. The creaking of the floorboards below grew louder, slow, deliberate, measured steps. Someone was in the house. I turned off the flashlight, plunging the room into darkness. My heart pounded so hard it felt like thunder in my chest. I pressed my back against the wall beside the office door, forcing myself to breathe silently. The footsteps reached the landing. A shadow passed under the crack of the door, blocking the faint light from the hallway. Whoever it was, they were standing right outside, listening. Then came a voice, low, male. "She's not here, Clara. Place looks empty." My blood ran cold. Clara. Another voice followed. Her voice. "Check again, Marcus. She's too predictable. If she ran, she'll come back for something." I covered my mouth to stifle a gasp. My daughter was here, and she wasn't alone. I had to think fast. If they found me, I was finished. I crouched and slipped the folder of documents into my coat pocket. Carefully, I reached for my phone and sent a quick text to Franklin. "Inside. She's back. Call police." A faint sound of glass breaking echoed downstairs. Marcus grunted. "What about the old man?" Old man? My heart seized. Franklin. "Leave him," Clara snapped. "If he followed her here, we'll deal with him later. Right now, I want proof she was in this house." Her tone was cold, unrecognizable. This wasn't the daughter I raised. This was someone else entirely. The doorknob turned slowly. I held my breath, every muscle in my body trembling. The door opened just an inch. A beam of light swept across the room. It landed on the desk, the bookshelves, the chair, and stopped just before reaching the corner where I stood. "Nothing," Marcus muttered. Clara sighed. "Fine. Check the backyard." As their footsteps retreated, I exhaled shakily. My knees felt weak, but I forced myself to move. If Franklin had followed me inside, he was in danger. I slipped out of the office and crept down the hallway, careful to avoid the floorboards that always creaked. From below came the faint sound of voices, sharp, urgent, angry. Then a crash. I froze at the top of the stairs, listening. "Who are you?" Marcus barked. A pause. Then Franklin's steady voice. "Just an old man trying to help." My heart clenched. Franklin had come in to protect me. "Check the basement," Clara ordered coldly. "If she's not here, she'll be soon." I turned toward the back window, the only way out now. My only chance was to escape, get help, and pray Franklin could hold on. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and comment below. What would you risk to protect someone who once saved you? As I climbed out onto the ledge, I heard Franklin scream, and I knew I was already too late. The fall and the flight. The sound of Franklin's scream cut through the night like glass breaking. For a split second, I froze, torn between running for my life and rushing back to help him. But I knew if I went down those stairs, none of us would make it out alive. The open window was my only chance. My trembling hands gripped the frame as I climbed onto the narrow ledge outside. The cold air slapped against my face, stealing my breath. Below me, the yard was drenched in shadows, the ground at least 20 feet down. "God, please," I whispered, inching along the side of the house toward the ivy-covered trellis. My knees wobbled, the wind tugging at my coat. As my heart pounded so loudly, I swore they'd hear it inside. From below came muffled voices, Marcus shouting, Clara barking orders. Then another sound, a heavy thud, followed by silence. Tears filled my eyes. "Franklin!" I breathed. I couldn't stop. I had to believe he was still alive. I had to make his bravery mean something. I reached the trellis and began to climb down, my fingers clutching the wooden slats like my life depended on it, because it did. Every muscle in my arms burned. My joints screamed in protest. At 71, I wasn't made for this, but fear has a way of making you stronger than you ever imagined. Halfway down, the trellis shifted. The old wood groaned, threatening to give way. I froze, pressing myself against the wall, praying it would hold. After a breathless moment, it did. I climbed faster, ignoring the sting of splinters and the ache in my hip.
When my feet finally touched the grass, I collapsed to my knees, gasping. I couldn't afford to rest. Lights flickered on inside the house. Clara's voice rang out, furious, frantic. "She's gone! Find her!" I ducked behind the hedge, my pulse hammering in my ears. A flashlight beam swept across the yard, passing inches from where I hid. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. The beam moved away. A car engine roared to life. Tires screeched. They were leaving. Maybe they thought I'd escaped on foot. Maybe they'd gone to look for me down the road. Either way, I only had minutes. I staggered through the backyard, climbed the low fence, and fell onto the neighbor's lawn. My body screamed in pain, but I pushed myself up and limped toward the street. When I finally reached the main road, I grabbed the burner phone Franklin had given me and dialed 911. "My name is Mira Thompson. My daughter is trying to kill me, and she's not alone." But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and comment below, what's the bravest thing you've ever done when fear tried to stop you? As the dispatcher's voice came through the line, I didn't realize the police were about to uncover far more than a murder plot. They were about to unravel a secret years in the making. The truth comes to light. The flashing red and blue lights painted the dark street in sharp colors as the police arrived. 2 officers stepped out, hands hovering near their holsters, scanning the area for danger. I waved them down, still breathless. "Please," I gasped. "They're inside. My daughter and a man. They've hurt someone." The older officer, a broad man with calm eyes, gently took my arm. "Ma'am, slow down. What's your name?" "Mira Thompson," I said, trembling. "They tried to make it look like a gas accident, to kill me and my grandson." The officers exchanged a look, half disbelief, half concern. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the red folder, my finger shaking. "I have proof. Bank records, insurance copies, everything. Please, just look." That changed their expressions immediately. The younger officer flipped through the pages with growing alarm. This looks serious, sir." The older one nodded, speaking into his radio. "Dispatch, we need backup at 214 Magnolia Lane. Possible homicide attempt in progress." Within minutes, more patrol cars arrived. I stayed in the back seat of one as officers surrounded the house. The radio buzzed with terse voices. "Perimeter secured. Moving in." Within minutes, more patrol cars arrived. I stayed in the back seat of one as officers surrounded the house. The radio buzzed with terse voices. "Perimeter secured. Moving in." The next few minutes felt like hours. My stomach twisted as I listened to shouts, the crash of glass, and the sharp echo of a single gunshot. Then, silence. When they finally led someone out, I pressed my face to the window. It wasn't Clara. It was Marcus, handcuffed, blood on his forehead, his face twisted in fury. But there was no sign of my daughter. The officer returned to the car and opened the door. "Ma'am, we found your friend, the older gentleman. He's alive, just banged up. Paramedics are with him now." I covered my mouth as relief flooded through me. "And my daughter?" He hesitated. "She wasn't there. We think she fled out the back before we arrived." My blood ran cold. If she was gone, that meant she still had one target left, Eli. I said urgently, "She's going after my grandson. She knows where he is." The officer's eyes widened. "Where's the boy now?" "With Franklin, at our old building, 42 Hillcrest." He grabbed his radio. All units, possible child abduction in progress at 42 Hillcrest. Move now. Within seconds, we were back in the patrol car, speeding through the streets with sirens wailing. My heart pounded with every passing second. As we turned onto Hillcrest Avenue, I saw it. The service door to Franklin's apartment slightly ajar, swaying in the wind. "Stay here, ma'am," the officer said, drawing his weapon. But I couldn't. Not when my grandson was in there. I ran after him, my pulse roaring in my ears. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and tell us in the comments, what would you do if the person you trusted most turned into your biggest fear? When we broke down that door, I found a note that nearly stopped my heart because it wasn't just a message. It was a cry for help. The missing. The door swung open with a crash, splintering against the wall. The apartment was dimly lit, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound. My voice broke through the silence. "Eli! Franklin!" No answer. The officer moved ahead, weapon drawn, clearing each corner. "Police! Anyone here?" I stumbled forward, my knees trembling. The couch was overturned, a lamp smashed on the floor. My heart raced as my eyes scanned the small space until I saw something on the kitchen counter. A note. I rushed toward it, snatching it up with shaking hands. The handwriting was messy, hurried, but I recognized it instantly. Eli's. "Grandma, I'm sorry. Mom came. She said you were hurt. She told me we had to go. I didn't want to, but she said she'd show me where you are. I think she's lying. I'm scared. Please find me." The paper slipped from my fingers. My mind went blank. "She has him," I whispered. "She took my grandson." The officer pressed his radio. "Suspect is mobile with a minor. Possible kidnapping. BLO on a silver SUV. Plate number unknown. Proceeding with search grid." I leaned against the wall, fighting back tears. Franklin, bandaged and pale, appeared in the doorway, escorted by a paramedic. "She's got him," he rasped. I nodded, barely able to speak. "She fooled him, said I was hurt." Franklin clenched his fists. "Then we go after her." But where would she take him? My mind raced. Clara was clever. She'd never risk staying on main roads. She'd go somewhere secluded, somewhere no one would think to look. Then it hit me. The lake house. It had belonged to my late husband. After he passed, Clara had begged me to sell it, but I never did. It was quiet, remote, and still stocked with supplies. And most importantly, she knew I hated going there because it reminded me too much of him. "I think she'll take him to the lake, the old house by Ridgewater." The officer nodded. "We'll alert nearby units." But I didn't wait. Franklin must have seen the look in my eyes, because he sighed. "You're not waiting for backup, are you?" "I can't," I said, my voice trembling. "Every minute counts." He shook his head, but grabbed his keys anyway. "Then I'm driving." We sped out of the city, tires skidding on the wet asphalt as the storm clouds rolled in. Lightning cracked across the horizon like nature itself was angry. The drive felt endless. My mind was filled with images of Eli, scared, alone, trapped with the one person he should have been safest with. As we turned onto the dirt road leading to the lake, I spotted it through the trees, the faint glow of headlights reflecting off the water. "She's here," I whispered. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and comment below. What would you do if the person you loved most became the one you feared most? We parked the car in silence, the rain pouring down. And that's when I saw Eli standing at the window with Clara Right behind him, the lake house. The rain came down in sheets, drumming against the windshield as we sat in silence. Through the blur of water, I could see the outline of the lake house, its windows glowing faintly against the storm. And there he was, Eli, standing near the window, his small face pale in the dim light. Behind him, the shadow of my daughter moved slowly, pacing like a restless predator. Franklin cut the engine. "We can't just rush in," he whispered. "She's dangerous, Mira." "I don't care," I said, gripping the door handle. "She has my grandson." The moment my feet hit the mud, lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the lake like a mirror. My clothes were instantly soaked, but I didn't care. I ran toward the porch, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Inside, the light flickered. Clara's voice came from the living room, calm, deliberate. "I knew you'd come, Mom." I froze. She was waiting for me. The front door creaked as I pushed it open. Clara stood near the fireplace, a faint smile on her lips, her hair damp and clinging to her face. Eli sat on the couch, clutching a blanket, his eyes red from crying. "Let him go, Clara," I said, my voice shaking. "It's over." "Over?" she echoed, laughing softly. "You think this ends with me just giving up? You've always had everything. The house, the money, even Eli's love. And me? I was invisible." Her words cut deep. "You're my daughter," I said, stepping closer. "Everything I have was meant for you." "No," she snapped. "It was left to you. You and your perfect little family. Dad always chose you over me, even in death. He left me nothing, and you made sure of it." Lightning flashed again, casting her shadow across the walls. For the first time, I saw her not as my daughter, but as a stranger, someone eaten alive by bitterness and greed. "Clara," I whispered, "this isn't the way." She lifted her hand, revealing something small and metallic. A lighter. "Oh, but it is. You always loved this place, didn't you? I thought it would be poetic to let it all end here." Franklin burst through the door before she could move, shouting, "Drop it!" The lighter clattered to the floor. Eli screamed and ran toward me. I pulled him into my arms, shielding him as chaos filled the room. Clara tried to bolt for the back door, but Franklin was faster. He tackled her to the ground, the two of them struggling as thunder rolled overhead. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and tell us in the comments, do you believe evil is born or made? As the storm raged around us, I thought it was finally over, until I saw the gasoline can tipped over by the fire. Flames of truth. Time seemed to slow. The air in the room thickened with the sharp, unmistakable smell of gasoline. My breath caught in my throat. The can had tipped beside the fireplace, its contents soaking into the old rug. And just inches away, a small flame flickered from a fallen ember, creeping closer, licking toward the liquid. "Franklin!" I screamed. He looked up, eyes widening as he saw it. He shoved Clara aside and grabbed the edge of the rug, trying to pull it away from the fire, but it was too late. The flame caught, and in an instant, the whole corner of the room erupted in orange. Eli cried out and buried his face in my chest. The sound of the fire roared louder than the storm outside, and heat rolled through the air in suffocating waves. "Get him out!" Franklin shouted, coughing as smoke filled the room. I clutched Eli tighter and stumbled toward the door, my vision blurring from the smoke. "Come on, baby, hold on to me." Behind us, Clara stood motionless, staring at the spreading fire, as if she couldn't believe what she'd done. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she murmured, her voice shaking. "It wasn't supposed to go like this." "Clara!" I cried, reaching out. "Please, come with us." But she just shook her head, tears cutting through the soot on her face. "No, I've already ruined everything." Franklin wabbed her arm. "Move!" he shouted. But she tore free, stumbling backward toward the flickering light. "I didn't mean for it to be this way," she whispered. "Tell Eli I'm sorry." A beam from the ceiling cracked and fell between us, sparks showering across the floor. I screamed her name, but the flames swallowed her silhouette. Franklin dragged me out the front door, the cold rain hitting my face like needles. We collapsed in the mud, coughing as the house burned behind us, the place that once held our happiest memories now glowing like a funeral pyre. Eli sobbed in my arms. "Mama's still inside." I pressed my forehead to his. "I know, sweetheart, I know." The sirens came minutes later, too late to save the house, too late to save Clara. Firefighters worked in the downpour, shouting orders, their faces grim. One of them shook his head when they found what was left inside. The storm finally began to fade, the first hint of dawn breaking through the smoke. I sat in the back of an ambulance, Eli wrapped in a blanket beside me, silent, staring at the flames. Franklin stood nearby, soaked to the bone, his face etched with exhaustion and sorrow. None of us spoke. There were no words left. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and let us know in the comments, do you believe some mistakes can ever be forgiven? As the fire burned itself out, I thought the nightmare was finally over, until the officer handed me something they found in the ashes. A photo that shouldn't have existed.
What remains? The fire had finally gone out. Only smoke and the quiet hiss of rain remained, curling up into the gray dawn like ghosts of what used to be. I sat wrapped in a blanket beside Eli, the paramedics long gone, the flashing lights fading into the mist. My hands still trembled, but not from cold, from everything that had happened. An officer approached, the same one who had helped us earlier. His face was solemn as he held something wrapped in a charred plastic sleeve. "Mrs. Thompson?" he said softly. "We found this near the fireplace. It survived the worst of the fire." He handed it to me. Inside was a half-burned photograph, one I hadn't seen in decades. It was me, Clara, and my husband, taken the summer before he died. We were at that very lake house, laughing, holding hands, the sunlight bouncing off the water. Clara couldn't have been older than 10. I traced her smiling face with my thumb, tears spilling down my cheeks. Even through all the anger and betrayal, she was still that little girl in my mind, the one who used to bring me wildflowers and say, "For you, Mama, so you don't forget how pretty things can be." Franklin sat down beside me, his voice gentle. "You did everything you could, Mira." I shook my head. Did I? Maybe if I listened sooner, if I'd seen the signs. He sighed, his weathered hand resting on mine. "You loved her. Sometimes love blinds us, but it also saves us. You saved that boy." Eli looked up at me then, his eyes red but steady. "Grandma, is Mama gone forever?" I pulled him close, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "No, sweetheart. As long as we remember her, the good parts, she'll never really be gone." The rain eased into a soft drizzle. Smoke curled upward, carrying the scent of ash and pine through the air. Somewhere across the lake, a bird began to sing, a small, fragile sound that somehow broke the silence. I looked at the burned remains of the house, the place that had witnessed love, loss, and everything in between, And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt something close to peace. The past had taken so much from me, but sitting there with Eli in my arms, I realized it hadn't taken everything. It couldn't. We would rebuild, not the house, but our lives. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I stood watching the pale morning light push through the clouds. Come on, sweetheart, let's go home. Eli slipped his hand into mine, and together we walked down the muddy path, leaving the ruins behind. But before we end this story, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and tell us in the comments, do you think people can ever truly escape their past? Because sometimes survival isn't about outrunning the darkness. It's about learning to live in the light that's left behind.